In the winter stillness of Fengxian, a village deep in Jiangsu province, life moved slowly. Wei Ling, a young mother with eyes sharp as flint, stumbled upon the truth by accident. She wasn't searching for it, only passing through the market on an ordinary day when she noticed an old shed at the edge of the village square, door ajar, and shadows spilling out like an invitation. What she found behind those splintered planks would change everything. A woman sat on the cold earth, chained by the neck, eyes wide and lost in silence. The video surfaced online later that day, blurry but powerful. A woman shackled, hidden away in the bitter chill of winter. It swept across social media like wildfire, igniting conversations and anger that reached beyond the village of Fengxian to the cities teeming with millions who had never known such silence. The woman was quickly dubbed the Chained Woman of XuZhou, her image an unflinching reminder of the stories that remained unseen. Initial explanations from local authorities were dismissive, claiming she was mentally ill, a willing participant in her own suffering. But the public's fury, sparked by Ling's courage and the haunting eyes of the chained woman, demanded more. The woman's story, it turned out, was not an isolated tragedy. It was part of a dark network woven through decades in provinces, a story of abduction, exploitation, and the quiet complicity that allowed it to fester. As the investigation unraveled, a harsh truth surfaced. The woman had been sold to a local villager, an older man named Chen, who had lived most of his life alone. Desperate for companionship and children to continue his family line, he paid a trafficker for a wife, a woman taken far from her home in another province. Her name had once been Li Mei, whispered by a mother and father who had lost her to the shadows years before. Chen's treatment of her was rooted in both desire and a brutal form of necessity. In a village where economic disparity and cultural isolation intersected, Mei's silent suffering became part of an unspoken understanding. She bore 8 children over the years, each birth adding to her burden as her health deteriorated. Without proper medical care, she endured each labor alone, with nothing more than makeshift remedies and the will to survive. Her body, weakened and scarred by years of neglect and repeated childbirth, could barely sustain her, but still, she endured. The practice revealed a painful reality. In rural China, as adults left villages for work in the cities, those left behind faced isolation and dwindling prospects for family continuity. The scarcity of young women led to desperation, a driving force that traffickers capitalized on, bringing stolen lives into hidden spaces where cries could not be heard. Chen was just one among many who turned to this dark solution, accepting what was seen as a necessary evil to continue his bloodline without the consequences of incest. Online, activists and ordinary citizens rallied behind the chained woman's plight. They dug for answers, shared stories of sisters and daughters lost in the same way. The outrage pressed the government to take more substantial action, detain those responsible, strengthen laws, and promise reforms. But justice, as Ling came to realize, was never just about punishment. It was about being heard. Mei was finally freed, taken to a place where chains no longer bound her body, though shadows lingered in her mind. Her health, ravaged by years of neglect, required months of recovery and care. Ling's discovery, once a ripple in a quiet village, became a wave that swept through the nation. It urged others to listen to what had been hidden and to ensure that silence would never again be the answer. Yet, beneath the surface, the problem remained. In remote villages far from the reach of cities and headlines, women were still being taken. For every woman who found her freedom, there were countless others still living in chains, forced to bear children and suffer in silence as their bodies and spirits broke under the weight of neglect. In Fengxian, where life continued much as before, the smoke from rooftops carried a different story, a tale of chains broken, voices found, and a village that could never forget. And Ling, who once believed her world was small, learned that one voice could spark a roar that shattered silence. But she also came to understand that vigilance was never ending, for even as light was cast on one corner, darkness still held many others. The stories of hidden faces and unseen suffering continued, waiting for the day they too would be found.